To debate whether this is a welcome announcement, I'm joined by the Director of Policy, Government and Public Affairs at UK Onshore Oil and Gas. In the studio with me, Charles McAllister. Thank you, Charles. Climate spokesman for the Conservative Environment Network, Jack Richardson. Thank you, Jack. And Lewis Perry, the Director of CAR26, a group who provide climate analysis. So, Charles, you're in the studio with me, so I'll go to you first. It's all well and good saying we're going to lift the moratorium on fracking, but there are lots of NIMBYs and there are also lots of environmental regulations still to deal with. What's the chances of this going ahead?
I think the chances are very good. I mean, I was very pleased, obviously, that the government lifted the moratorium, but we've been totally clear that isn't enough. We need comprehensive policy reform, especially on planning and permitting. If the government deliver that, we will deliver jobs, energy security, community benefits, a huge range of things. The case for fracking in the UK is blindingly obvious.
So, Jack, could this be said to be part of the levelling up strategy? This could boost some regions of the UK where shale gas can get going.
So basically, my opinion is that you saw yesterday in the budget that we had fracking ban lifted, but we also had onshore wind ban lifted. So I think at this point, it's basically made the best energy source win. I do think, personally, from an energy perspective rather than an environmental perspective, that Charles has his work cut out a lot more than renewables, because renewables are just much more popular. They do cut bills and they can go up a lot faster. There's not that sort of big opposition to them. But yeah, to be honest, I'm just quite happy, beaming.
Lewis, I can see you shaking your head there on that. What do you want to say?
The thing that always... hello, good afternoon, Emily, by the way.
Good afternoon.
He knows that renewables are heavily subsidised. They are not cheaper and they're certainly not popular. In actual fact, at national level with polling, they say that it is popular, renewables, but on a local level, planning applications are very regularly turned down for wind farms and solar farms, because they're hideous, they're expensive, and they don't work.
Jack,
he must know that. So, that's totally disingenuous. I'm sorry.
Jack, I'll let you come back on what Lewis just said. You're a spokesperson from the Conservative Environment Network. Hit back on that.
I know NIMBYism is a problem in this country. Fracking also has lots of people coming against it on the planning applications. I don't think that's not really an argument, to be honest.
Okay, what about the subsidies? But what you're saying is cheap. You're saying it's popular. Talk about the subsidies, because it's not.
Okay, Lewis. Yes, Jack. On that point, on the subsidies, are renewables very heavily subsidised?
So there's the old renewables obligation that was created by Labour. Conservatives went to a contract for difference, which is now kicking in. They're not adding anything to our bills whatsoever now. They actually pay back into the system because the price of gas is so high, and that's what's setting the price of power. You can check that out. It's true. Sorry.
Charles, yes, I'll let you come in on that.
I think a really important point here is there is no question there is a NIMBY issue in the UK, and that applies across the board. Wind, solar, house building, shale gas. I think a really big benefit of shale gas compared to renewables is the energy density. So a shale gas pad's about 2 hectares in size, about the size of a football pitch. To produce the same amount of energy from a wind farm, you need a land area 725 times the size. So in terms of delivering kilowatt hours per acre per year, fracking is the best technology in the UK. Again, we do need the reform to change that. But I think the narrative coming out of the government is really, really positive. Because see, if we continue down the business as usual approach, the economic, environmental and geopolitical consequences are very severe.
Isn't this the problem, Lewis? I don't care where we get our energy from as long as it's cheap. And, I can switch on my heating without having a bill the size of the length of my arm. So, well, with a number the length of my arm anyway, the number of digits. So is the problem not that the government should simply stop trying to pick winners, liberalise the planning so that people can get whatever it is, whether it's solar or shale gas exploration or whatever, just going?
Yeah, let things fly or die on. Let them stand on their own 2 feet. If solar and wind are so fantastic, take all the subsidies off. Don't give the people that actually do this stuff, huge amounts of money, a fixed amount of money over a long period of time, and let's compare it. It's just absolute nonsense. Renewables are a joke, an absolute joke.
Strong stuff, Lewis.
Fracking, and I'm so happy, and Charles is happy. It's great. We need to get fracking as soon as possible. We need
strong stuff, but I must put
like the Olympic Act. That's what
I
we
must
need.
put the genuine concern that some people do have. Now, fracking was banned in 2019. That was after it caused some earth tremors near Blackpool, I believe.
Yeah, is there equivalent of me sitting
is there
on this
not an
chair
issue
behind
that
it?
it can be dangerous and disruptive to local citizens?
Can I answer that?
Local residents. I'll go Lois and then we'll go to you, Charlie.
Okay.
Sorry, you want me to answer that? Charles is probably the best person to
Charles,
answer that. But
Charles, we'll get you on that one.
But the equivalent of, these alleged tremors is the same as a bus going past your window or me sitting on this chair.
Go on, Charlie.
Right, so the regulations that were put in place for us, if you applied those regulations to the geothermal, construction or quarrying industry, none of them would have been able to operate in the UK, all right? It was 0.5 on the Richter scale we had to stop at. That's the same as me sitting down on this chair, so I wouldn't say that's a significant event. The moratorium was based on a report on the Preston New Road 1Z well. Largest event of that well was 1.5 on the Richter scale. It's the surface equivalent of me dropping a honeydew melon in this studio. Again, I don't think that's a serious event. And the largest event from the Preston New Road site on the PNR2 well was a 2.9 on the Richter scale. The surface vibration from that is half of the maximum permitted at construction sites. I think a really important point here is we're not asking for special treatment, even on planning, on seismicity or on environmental permitting. We're asking for parity in regulations. We just want to be treated fairly.
Jack, of course we are signed up to net zero. Now, the fracking ban may have been lifted, but there are various regulations such as, I believe it's called the climate compatibility check or something like that people who want to frack in certain areas will have to essentially not sign up to, but I can't think of the word, but they have to essentially, there are regulations that may well stop fracking exploration or oil and gas exploration around the country. Do you think that fracking simply isn't compatible with net zero?
Charles might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the climate compatibility test actually applies to onshore. I think it applies to offshore, but it's not going to start this licensing round, which is starting next month, which is going to see about 100 oil and gas licenses. In terms of net zero, I'm completely fine with the logic that having our own shale gas is less emissions than importing US shale gas. It's just from an energy policy perspective, I'm just quite sceptical that fracking is going to yield that much gas. But I'm not alone in that. Most of the energy industries are.
Can I jump in as well?
Charlie, are we over-egging this?
No, the potential for fracking is absolutely huge. If we can get 10% of the 500 years worth of gas out of the ground, that's enough for 50 years of supply. The value of it is trillions and trillions of pounds, okay? It's really interesting to hear that the Conservative Environment... Hold on a second, hold on. It's really interesting to hear the Conservative Environment Network point now is a bit more nuanced, because you guys put out a video in February that frankly was full of mistruths. You said there was 6,000 wells needed to cut our gas demand in half. That's not true. You said it would industrialise the countryside. I've already addressed that point. So it is good to see that your position on fracking is slightly moving towards more where we are. On the climate change point, the carbon intensity of shale gas has been forecast to be a quarter of that of liquefied natural gas. So if we don't develop shale and we over-rely on LNG, our gas supply carbon footprint goes through the roof.
Jack, I'll let you come back on that, and then I'll give Lewis the final word.
Yes, sure.
Jack,
I don't have any problem with the logic around carbon emissions. It's like I said, it's just you're going to have to persuade a lot of communities to have fracking in order to shift the amount of gas that we need, because we used to have Russia in our gas market. They've cut down all our all their supply. It's going to take a lot to sort of shift that, and I'm just quite sceptical that you're going to be able to do that. They tried very hard in Poland. There's a lot of investment. There's a lot of community support. There's a lot of government support. They just didn't manage to. And I don't know.
Very quickly, then Lewis gets the final word, Charlie.
Ban on onshore wind as well.
It didn't work in Poland. It didn't work in Poland for geological reasons, Jack. It was like trying to frack Play-Doh. Okay, the two things you need for the geology to work, it needs to be low in clay and high in total organic carbon content. We've got both of those.
We've got both of those. Lewis, I'll give the final word to you.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with carbon. CO2 does not cause any climate change. The whole thing's a joke. And but even if you believe in it all, it's still best to frack.